Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Those who've heard me speak, and many of you have here, I talk about, my journey and how I started my career in public accounting. I was a tax consultant. I had an MBA, I had a law degree, I had a CPA, and I grew up in a family where my dad was a college professor. My mom was an academic. My parents divorced. My dad remarried. Woman had a PhD. It was just very academic. Hey, you study, you do well, you accumulate credentials, and life works out. And it doesn't really work that way. And I discovered that when I left that big firm, because when you're in the big firm, they don't really teach you these things either. The big clients are there. There's probably a little bit of networking at the very top levels, but where I was, there wasn't. You just came in and you worked. And you left and you're like, okay, now what? I've got all the knowledge. The price is right because I'm really operating out of a spare room in my house. So I don't have the overhead. Now what? How do people find out about you? You've got everything. How do people find out about you? And that's, one point along the way there when I got involved in what is now AmSpirit Business Connections. Even then, it was just down the line, maybe 6 months later where I realized, okay, success is going to be all wrapped up in the relationships that I have. And I reflect on that all the time. And I have grown AmSpirit Business Connections. We've had thousands of members over the years, lots of great connections. And I don't interview a lot of people from the organization. I've interviewed a few here and there. But I'm going to start just reaching out to people who have interesting stories or doing some interesting things and get them on and talk about their journey. Today I have on with me Andy Milligan. He's the founder of MMG Design, which is a web design strategy firm. Andy, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Frank. We were just talking about how we don't get invited on as much as we invite other people onto our own show. So I'm super flattered, especially someone that's been in the game as long as you have, my friend. So,
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I just think that I think there's a lot of, not everybody has podcasts. There are a lot more people out there that want to get on, and they don't necessarily have them. So we already have that without working against us, just the sheer opportunity. And then there are people who just, they don't, for whatever reason, we don't fit or whatever. I don't worry about it. So,
I think we also have a pretty good advantage, though. It's because we know exactly what it looks like to put a really good podcast pitch together. Like, I know when someone reaches out to me to be on the show, I know exactly what I want to hear. I want to see what makes it easy for me and how can you add value to the audience.
yeah.
So that's a good diabolical other end of it, I think.
Well, no, it is. I mean, and I try to, when people reach out to me, it's a lot of times it's a response with, and so, right? It's just say they're really great and they've done this and, and so, how does it fit in with what I'm doing?
Yeah,
And I tell them, don't make me work. I shouldn't have to work to get you on the show. You should sell me on why you should be on the show. And
exactly.
some people are offended by that, to be perfectly honest. Or I assume they're offended. They never respond. So whatever. So let's talk about your journey. How you've got this web design firm. We've met because you're in AmSpirit Business Connections, and but you've got this design firm. You're young. You can say your own age. I'm not going to rat you out. But I think you're unique because a lot of people who are your age are caught up in something more corporate. Maybe it's not a big company, but that's what college, education slots you for, is working for somebody else. And as long as that opportunity is there, people stick with it. But I think you have that opportunity, you have the skills, but you've decided, hey, I'm going to go a different path here.
Yeah. First of all, super appreciate that. And I will also lead by saying I'm not anyone totally exceptional from a business mind standpoint. I was very much thrown into the whole entrepreneurship concept as a result of a layoff about 15 to 18 months ago, so February of 24.
Mhm.
And even when I think back on that chapter now, I was always kind of freelancing. And when I tell the story, I'll give you the short, long version. I call that like my dirtbag freelancer phase before I really viewed myself as a business owner. I think that's the mistake a lot of freelancers make is that they say yes to anyone that's in need of services. So I was doing all types of marketing, making social media content, sending emails for people, just doing anything that I could do to pay the bills at a point where I was at a position where I needed income. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make is that when you start from a position of lack, you're not as forward thinking. You don't bring the same energy to your day, your work as a business owner. You just start to think of yourself as solo employee. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about how the education system kind of prepares you for that. And a lot of people struggle and I certainly did too, when you don't have the director, someone telling you what to do during the day. You grow up like really fast. Not just socially maturity, you have to learn to show up for yourself, be responsible, and you age a lot in a good in a good and bad way. I'm probably getting a few gray hairs already. It feels like, but that was the chapter. I worked at a design agency for a year right after graduating college. I The most interesting, and I even was preparing for this episode, like what is the biggest like inflection points in my own genesis of the story? And it was definitely in college. I played golf, and there was this student networking organization or the student marketing organization called the Oiler 10 at the University of Findlay. And Frank, the short version of what this is basically a marketing program for athletes where we worked for free. We just did marketing services like design, strategy, consulting, stuff like that. And the reason we found it was because a lot of the athletes were traveling on weekends, right? They didn't have the chance to go to some of these internship programs that created a lot of job opportunities. So our idea was pretty much to just kind of learn on the job. And we were called the Oiler 10 because we were the Findlay Oilers. And it originally started with 10 people. So what we would do, Frank, is we would meet at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday mornings, and we would do a lot of outreach to local businesses. We would say, "Hey, we are working for free in exchange for donations to the university. It's going to be a really good social play for you guys, and we'll take a dabble in your marketing and basically, learn on the job." And I got to do a design and web development project for a local brewery, and that's what first got me into the business. And after that, I was just like hooked and enamored. And when I think back on it, I wasn't making anything back then, and I was spending so much time. I was spending more time in that group doing volunteer projects, learning on the job, than I was, on my classes. And I majored in strength and conditioning. So it was a very, I reached this point after graduation where I was like, man, what I love to do during the day is not what I'm, not what I'm qualified to do. Like I don't have the major in it. So,
Yeah.
um, right after I graduated, I knew I had to get a job because it wasn't want to be the person that lived. I mean, and this is sort of political, but I don't view anything against people that live with their parents, especially in this economy now. But I did not, I had this like very fixed mindset, like, I do not want to live with my parents past graduation. So I got the first job in design that I could after I graduated. Worked on the job for an agency in Marysville for about a year. And that's when I started dabbling in freelance. And after the layoff happened a year ago, so in 24, I've been building the company ever since then, diving into networking, really having to learn on the job. And, now here 18 months later at MMG full time, worked with over 50 business owners in the Columbus region to clarify, their website and marketing strategy and put it together on a homepage that markets their business effectively. And that's what we've really honed in on. The biggest value add that, you know, I've gotten really good at over the past couple of years running on the job and still trying to get better every day. So that's the short version, I guess you could say.
No, that's I mean that's a great story. It's interesting you've never used your major. Well,
Hmm.
I don't practice law anymore. I mean, it's I think that's a story of a lot of people that they go off to college. They want you to make a decision when you're 18 years old about something you have no clue about.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It's not realistic. Let's put it that way. At what
Hmm.
point along the way did you realize? Because I mean, you're the Finley 10, which is, I assume it's still going. Is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You guys are doing cold outreach. Um, it's probably at a point now where it's not cold outreach and the word's out that, hey, these
Mhm.
kids are here and they're willing to do these things. But at what point did you realize, okay, there's this networking thing? I can
Mhm.
do this cold outreach, but um, there's that's not necessarily scalable because for it to work, you've got to be working it.
Right. Right. I would say the first experience that I had with networking, and I think when we're younger, we do a lot of the practices, but we don't identify it with the term. And we're kind of building this backlog of skills, whether it's communication, whether it's just getting to know more people, showing up for others. Um, you don't really quantify it, but then you start to pick up, okay, wow, like this first job, this introduction, this came from someone that I talked to a long time ago. Um, and then when you put the systematic approach on the like a 301, very simple level, you think, how can I create more of those opportunities in the future? I think that's what a lot of networking is showing up with no expectations so that you create the lottery ticket of some of that stuff happening in the future. And I think my first experience with networking the term came when I saw it being done very well. So I joined AmSpirit about a year ago in Dublin, Ohio. I did my QA vetting of every of the organization because, you know, lean financial business owner, you have limited resources to invest
Yeah.
your time and your energy and money. So I went to, we used up all of my free visits to local chapters. I visited the Metro chapter, visited the one in Columbus, got to meet a ton of people, and honestly, just the biggest value add in the beginning for me was being able to get better at saying what I did. And you refine your reps over and over and over because if you can't, and you know this, but if you can't elaborate, if you can't exquisitely tell people what you do, you can't create that lottery ticket to either they make a referral for you or create the opportunity of what compounding benefits of a relationship make. And when we were talking before we were recording about where the real benefits come, not just in networking, but in relationships as a more abstract term, is the second, the third, the fourth, the ongoing times, the more deep relationships that you build. Because we talked about it, can be super lonely in the beginning, not just from, especially in my phase when I was, solo freelancer. Um, you're spending a lot of your work hours by yourself, and it's lonely because not a lot of people are doing the same thing that you're doing. You're not in that shared office space. And when you're in that shared office space, you have there's just general sense of like, okay, I'm kind of in the right place. Like other people are here. Whereas if you're building your own business, you don't have a place to either talk about what's going on in your head, what strategy is coming up, a place to share wins, dude. Like that's huge
Yeah.
because you can get into a mindset too. If you're not sharing wins, you're taking time to acknowledge even the small wins, then you just get into a perpetual cycle of, where there's an end. So,
Yeah. Or,
um,
or or
I,
even
f-
sharing the setbacks. I found when I
yeah.
had the opportunity to, again, you're working on your own. Well, here's a very specific story. Early on, I had a client stiff me, didn't pay my bill. It was clear they weren't going to pay it, right? And it was $500. It was not the end of the world, but it was $500, and it's the principle. I did the work, and the notion that somebody wouldn't pay you, it just
Yeah.
grated at me. And I remember going to a chapter and just kind of being out of sorts, and somebody saying, "Is everything okay?" It's like, "Yeah, I just got stiff $500." And like, oh yeah, that
Hmm.
happened to me last week. And he kind of chuckled and blew it off. Like, and I realized at that moment, it's like, yeah, you know what? Welcome to the
Not
business world.
alone.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not alone. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. There's a ton of value in that. And also, when you say that, it reminds me of whenever we talk about getting stiffed on payment, like I don't know if you've ever seen the videos of like contractors, when they get stiffed on payment, they'll go and take like a jackhammer and start like wrecking the patio that they built. I was like, what's my version of that? I was like, oh, I know they're hosting information, but I never do that because, we're
you know
nice
what I
people.
did?
But what?
This is what I did. It's really kind of really the opposite of it.
Hmm.
I would send people a copy of the bill and just say, this is forgiven. I realize that you probably are hurting for money, and I just don't want you to have this hanging over your head. So I'm forgiving this debt. Um, and that would create more of a reaction than hounding them for money. People would call, no, 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 I'm not that,
Hmm.
I will get you paid. I will get you paid. I promise. It's like, you know what? I'm not expecting it. If you do, great. If you don't, um, and but what I found in those moments, Andy, is it gave me peace. I've
Hmm.
I've forgiven it. I don't, this the mental poison of this resentment of somebody stiffing me. No, I'm not going to do work for him ever again. Um, but just I'm not gonna take the what I'll call the second arrow. Right, you hit with the
Hmm.
first arrow, it's like you're wounded. It's like that second one that'll kill you. So it's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I forgive you. Just let's just move on.
Look at you, Frank. You're far wiser than I am. The
I'm
contrast in our
I'm
examples
far
there just
older
shows
than you are.
that. Yeah.
Uh, but you
Yeah.
but I think that's part of networking, right? I think you learn that along the
Hmm.
way. If you have people in your group, Thad Rieger's in your group, Thad and I were in a group, years ago together. Bruce
Hmm.
Johnson. I mean, you just start to learn little nicks of things along the way.
Hmm.
Um, so anyhow,
Yeah.
your firm's all about building visual identities, right? Um,
Hmm.
how important is that clear brand message when it comes to networking and building relationships?
It's a good question. Um, I know we talked about a little bit about, if you don't efficiently communicate and letting other people know how you can help them, then there's no opportunity. You're not even giving yourself a chance.
Yeah,
And this is very much something that I had to learn the hard way. It's a very personal experience for me, is especially when it comes to a website, you think if I'm constraining the method of communication to one screen, and even just like above the fold, so that's what people see before they scroll, what is the most efficient form of saying, basically, our 30-second commercial? What's the most efficient form of communication, saying that in as few words as possible, that then creates the strongest impression? And there's so many correlations between, website messaging and networking, um, because depending on how long you engage with someone, how um, whether it's your first time meeting someone or you don't know how long you're going to meet again, what's the most efficient form of saying what you do, how it can help them, and creating the sense of where they can identify you in the future, if that need arises. And you have an awesome strategy, and it was one of the things that I shared when you came on my show was slotting the whens in there. So when this comes up in your day, then that's how I help. And telling stories about how you've solved problems like that for other people. That's where things like testimonials and case studies, those are things that we always try and portray on the homepage. Um, there's so many correlations between the two, and that's it's everything because not just for referrals and for ongoing, but for people to actually feel justified in raising their hand and saying like, yes, I identify with that need. The
right.
communication part of that is you can't overstate how important it is.
Yeah, I find that sometimes people try to get too cute. I mean, not necessarily on websites, but in general, they want to kind of come up with a clever way of talking about their business,
Hmm.
or describing their business, and the they know exactly what the metaphor is, right? Whatever, for the life of your business, or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
but other people don't,
Yeah,
and
they call that being clever versus being clear. So a lot
yeah,
of people will you said it, you can't see the water you're swimming in. And that so spot on. I love that
Yeah.
analogy. It's like being a fish in water because a lot of people will lean towards not just aesthetically when they're either designing their own site. You see it all the time where people design something, they use inside lingo, they use jargon to, it's something that only they understand. And they're like, oh man, this is great. Um, but then that creates a communication gap when people read something that's very complicated to them. You jump right over the hurdle and you make it so much harder for them to say, yes, I can identify with that. And yes, you're the one that can help me with this because you're mislabeling the thing that you do. Maybe you didn't mean to, but that's why feedback, especially in everything, feedback and the biggest needle mover in my own life and career was just removing my creative emotion, especially having the background of a creative, removing the emotion that you have to feedback. Literally just asking people, "Hey, what's your impressions? What would you change? Basically, what sucks?" And use that information to say, "Okay, this is objective, and this is reality, and this is the gap that my fish and waterness, for lack of better terms, is clouding the judgment on." Um, and that's more of a life principle, but it definitely applies to communication and networking as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What advice would you give to other creatives or entrepreneurs who want to use um, networking to grow their businesses, but may not consider themselves a natural networker?
hmm
You strike me as
There's,
you strike me as an introvert. Is that
oh yeah,
okay?
I
Yeah,
would 100% agree. 100%
yeah,
agree. Um, I think there's a couple different perspectives on that. I would say as an introvert, first of all, labeling introvert versus extrovert, some of the definition of that is where do you get your energy, not what are your natural
right.
inclinations are, right? So take tabs on how you feel during and after doing one or the other. And I just know, just being self-aware on my own emotions, how I feel throughout the day. If I sit, if I stand, if people can't see the studio, I'm at a standing desk, at this desk all day and do creative work, I will have a great time. I will be jamming, and not every day is fun, but I will be jamming, and I really enjoy just doing my craft and doing it very well. 2 or 3 days of that go by, and get not as happy, and I get very much you know, on the other end of the spectrum. So having that balance of saying, okay, and I feel really good when I talk to other people, when I go through these emotions that are in my head, when I share what I'm doing, and I get a lot of energy from that too. But for people who want to become more, if you want to approach networking, if you have this label on yourself, excuse me, that you are an introvert, probably just because you haven't done it before, first of all.
Yeah,
You know what it is like to get out there. And if you're really struggling taking that first step, the biggest thing to do is what I try and do with anything is gamifying it. So saying, okay, do this 3 times a week and make it as a manual task. Like show up for this, reach out to 5 new people, follow up with XYZ amount, starting very minimal and saying, okay, once I start to prove to myself that I've done these tasks, I can eventually start to see the work of saying, okay, I'm building a network. Um, and that's extrapolated over a very long time period because what I'm learning, especially, you mentioned I'm young, I won't say my age, but as I'm young, there's compounding benefits to this stuff. And the faster you can pay down your ignorance debt, you can overcome the mindset of saying, like, I'm not an extrovert. I don't have what it takes to go out and go meet people. Then that's just going to benefit you more in the future because you've already learned that lesson. You don't have to learn it again. And networking is something that compounds, as you know, Frank, because it's like the stock market. If you can invest in it early and be really set and be consistent with it over time, that's where all the benefits lie because you get these subsidiary connections. You have friends of friends and people that introduce you to new people. And just some of the stories I've had of people that I didn't even know introduced me to someone that I didn't know either is you start to see case studies of that happen in your own business, and it just becomes more reinforcing to say, man, I should really get out of the room today and, go to AmSpirit, drive an hour down there and, say what's up to Bruce and all the guys. Makes it a lot easier to do that every week. Um,
Yeah.
so just get started. That's the biggest thing.
No, I think there's some great insight in there. I love the analogy or the parallel to investing. The sooner you get started, the better off you're going to be. So, well, let's shift gears here a little bit and let's talk about MMG design, types of things you're doing, how the audience can help you.
Yeah. So we do web design and homepage messaging for startups and small businesses. So a lot of times we start with alignment workshops. So we help people get really clear on what their offer and their audience is before they develop their own site or they outsource it to a designer or developer. But the biggest part we do in that workshop is just saying, okay, this is the products, services, this is my offer, and this is the person that it's for. And then you use design to meet in the middle of that. What does the audience, so your champion, need to see in order to take action on your offer? And you structure that in multiple different ways. Obviously, there's context of the industry, but the most important part is that you know those two. And once you get really clear on who that champion is, then you put together the presentation. You make it very easy for them to get in touch with you to take that next step. And everything design-wise on top of that is gas on the fire. So our workshop there is really meant to help people identify those two things, and then we do the internal research to present that to them and help them know that on a different level. But people can do a lot of this stuff themselves. But when it comes to the website design and dev specifically, that's kind of where we come in and help people and consult on either their best DIY option or their best option for an agency or freelancer to work with. So
Yeah, it's like we said before, you can't see the water you're swimming in, and I think it's the same thing with respect to web design. I mean, I have a web developer I've used for years, and I've fired ideas at him, and he's come back with, he's probably thinking it, you dumbass, don't do that. But I mean, he'll say, hey, don't do that because of this, and it's like, oh my God, that's right. I didn't think about
Mhm.
that. You
Yep.
know, but he's done lots of it, just as you've done lots of it. Best way to get a hold of you. People want to reach out listening to this.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. So I show up every day on LinkedIn. You guys can follow me there. I'll give Frank that link. The name of my agency, mmgdesign.net. I also do free homepage audits for anyone who wants to eliminate their website doubt. So what I usually do, and I've done a ton of these, Frank, is I just send a 5 to 10 minute tele, which is a screen recorder with has my pretty face, my pretty maybe not face on it, but I just go through and record, okay, who is your audience? Who is your offer? What is your offer? And how they can more effectively display that on their homepage and make their website better and give them some things that they can change on their own. And you can find that at mmgdesign.net/audit, which I can remember to say it, but not include it in the show notes. So,
No, that's okay.
yeah.
I will get that. I will get it in the show notes. So I appreciate your time here today.
Yeah, dude. Like I said, I'm super, super honored to be on here, man. Especially someone that's, dude. Like, can I just say how much credit you deserve for having done this for people, dude? If you don't have a podcast, let me just like hype Frank up for a little bit. You have 600. What episode are you on?
I think you're episode 838.
830. Yeah, that is insane. Like the consistency, the showing up for other people. People don't understand how much goes into that over such a long period of time. And you deserve not just the world for having elevated someone and given people like me and other, founders and business owners a network or a platform to be able to tell their story. But having done it, I'm a spring chicken. We're getting ready to have episode 100. I'm marketing by design. But even just, the not even at triple digits yet, I know how much it takes. And I learned recently that you do it all yourself too. So props to you, man. I'm super flattered to be on here. And this is the highlight of my day.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.